In all RPG games, you are given a character to serve as a proxy through which you get to act yourself out in the game. Whether the RPG game is about a known character or one you build from scratch, in nearly all RPG games you start off as a fragile, weak piece of shit that gets wrecked at the slightest challenge, but through some disease of the human mind, you somehow find pleasure in the process of getting that weak, sniveling character of yours into a state where you can actually face the hardest challenges, NPCs, bosses of the game on equal footing. We find that process so exhilarating and enjoyable that we get addicted to this shit. We can spend hours a day doing only that repeatedly, watching that bar of experience painfully slowly nudge up. But we don't really stop to ask ourselves why. Why is that so enjoyable? Why do we get gripped to the extent that we do by 2D screen images? Why does our brain get tricked to the embarrassing extent that it does? The answer is that RPG games tap into the most primal and meaningful male story, the hero archetype. RPG games are masterful in replicating and extrapolating what our primal brain would think is an archetypal hero story. Your brain doesn't think that you are outside of the game. Instead, it thinks you are the character. You see, it's slick wizardry, slimy sorcery, purely designed by nerdy eyesight-lacking coders for the sole purpose of tricking that dumb brain of ours. And it works, doesn't it? We do actually get truly, really invested in the game. But why am I telling you all this? Am I trying to make a case against video games? Well, not really. What I'm trying to do is to get you to see something that should seem obvious to us but we don't recognize. Why aren't you engaged in life the same way you do your favorite role-play video games? Why don't you act out your hero arc in real life? Why don't you act with the same enthusiasm, intensity, grit? Why don't we get gripped by our life character the same way a video game character does? The stakes are, after all, infinitely higher, since we'll all die and only get one chance at the game of life. So why don't we play as if our life was on the line? Because it is. Our life is literally on the line. We're all in on this, whether we like it or not, but yet we don't act like it. It would seem self-evident that taking the video game approach to life would be the best way to be as a person, to not take things personally and to get systematically better in all areas you lack in, to become the person you want, so that you can actually truly respect yourself, enjoy your life, have confidence, feel powerful. I mean, how nice would that be? And how isn't that all we ever try to do? Somehow, we do not act this way at all. We, in fact, in all areas we perceive ourselves lacking in, just avoid altogether. And there are a few good reasons for that. The most obvious one is that if you die in real life, you're done. There is no setback point, no second chance. But there is a small issue with that argument though. Most leveling up games in real life don't lead to death, do they? I mean, just think of whatever you lack in. You wouldn't die from trying to become better at that, would you? But the trick is, your brain doesn't know this though. Your brain isn't adapted to modern life, where you are actually nearly always safe. And there is a near zero probability of death from life exploration, which in contrast was the rule for every man that lived for the past 300,000 years. Death was the rule and survival was the unlikely event. That is how your brain is shaped and wired. You're a bipedal ape that will most likely die from fucking with your immediate environment a bit too much. That is how you're wired, neurobiologically. That's why you don't perceive yourself and approach life as if you're a video game character, because you irrationally think death is 3 steps away from each slightly novel action you take in the world. And needless to say, that in our time, that is wrong. That is not your true current reality. That is not how you should live or act. So, let me propose an alternative to how we should approach the game of life, starting with the most stifling aspect of it: emotions. Our emotions are both our driving force and our most unshakable brakes, our most insurmountable walls. But the thing is, you can very easily shift how your emotions affect you if you do two things. The first is you notice them. Stop being mindless, reactionary ape and notice when negative emotions arise in your brain. The second step is that you're the one that chooses how to react to your emotions. If you detach enough to notice them, you're the one in charge. So instead of perceiving negative emotions as just that, think of them as your 3 billion years old brain signaling you what you need to improve. Think of it this way. You're a character in a video game, and as such, you cannot take things personally. In Skyrim, for example, and by the way, I'm using Skyrim as the example here, but you can replace Skyrim by any game you had to level up your character in. The concept applies just the same. So, in Skyrim, if you go against a frost dragon from the start, you're gonna get chewed up in 3 seconds. You might get angry and frustrated, but you don't just stand there cursing and blaming your character for being a worthless piece of garbage because he's incapable of beating the dragon. Instead, you level up, you take on missions, you buy better equipment, better axes, level up your skills and magic. You learn to forge better weapons and armor, and you keep doing so until you get to the point where you can take on a frost dragon. You might even use health potions amidst the battle. In a very real sense, this applies just as well to real life, but somehow we cannot seem to view it that way naturally, despite how self-evident, how empowering and freeing implying this should seem. The way we act in real life is utterly different from game characters. You must integrate the knowledge that it is in your best interest to act as if you're an actual character in a video game of life, and that implies this: don't take things personally, ever. People's opinions of you are only a reflection of who they are and their sets of beliefs. It is only a statement about themselves and not something to be taken personally. You just need to get better, to become stronger, because that's the best way to have the best experiences, the best life, to gain true self-respect. Stop taking your emotional responses to things personally. They are only there to signal something to you and not something to be used to judge yourself by. Emotions are only signals to your attention. Whatever you might feel, it signals you in areas you might improve and get to the point where that emotional reaction is no longer needed, so that you could have better life experiences, so that your character is better protected and cared for. Your emotions are only ever manifestations of self-love, disguised as hidden wisdom and sometimes harsh judgments. They are telling you what you need. They are trying to help you, to protect you, to shield you, to guide you, to empower you, and you should only perceive them as such. It is the deepest parts of you talking to you in that given language. If something has always elicited fear in you and you know most people do not experience the same level of fear in that area, then you have to face that area which incites the fear in you until you get strong enough to make the fear irrelevant. In a way, I'm describing exposure therapy in a game-like format. Don't you find it inspiring that exposure therapy is the most proven and reliable tool to deal with our fears? And don't you think it's fucking amazing how that maps perfectly to the level up concept, which, by the way, and I'm repeating myself here, isn't a coincidence. It is the most recurring concept in video games for a very good reason. That's how your dopaminergic system is wired. That's where your motivation comes from. That is why we fucking love games. If, for example, you are not good at the social game, at making and or keeping friends, at getting into relationships or the type of ones you'd want to get into, if your conversational skills are shit or are lacking, if you experience mild to high anxiety around strangers, at parties or around people in general, don't think I'm just weird, I just suck at this, or why aren't I as good as Jimmy? Why is it so easy for fucking Jimmy? Instead, consciously schedule and work on bettering your social skills. Randomly start conversation with strangers, and yes, you'll most likely be a cringy fuck and will say dumb shit, perhaps even stutter, and it will feel horrible and scary, and that's only natural because you're a noob in that area. But eventually, you'll get good at it. If you start a conversation with 100 people, there is no way you could suck and be afraid as much at the 100th person as you did at the first. You would have leveled up in social ease, in self-marketing, in confidence, in speech, in charisma. That's the rule of the game. You will be implicitly upping the levels you consciously train over time and decreasing the negative emotional responses they used to conjure. And the price you pay is having to face your fears, consciously, repeatedly. But isn't that a small price to pay for the promise of the best version of you to come about? For someone endlessly better than you to be you, and for you to be him. See? Aren't you a video game character? If you do not like how you look, don't think that's just genetics or whatever fucking reason your mind throws at you, because justification is there to get you to resignation. That way, you no longer need to improve, to put actual effort and go through a lot of pain and fear in the process. Instead, you go to the gym, you get the body you would like to see reflected in the mirror, you count macros and calories and think about what you eat, you put effort into clothes and fashion, you get a hairstyle that best fits your facial features, you lower your body fat, which will make your face more attractive, you take care of your skin. If you practice these things and watch yourself do so, then over time, slowly but unavoidably, you will gain self-respect, self-confidence, and you will actually become objectively better.